thank you for joining us for the Hope Community Church broadcast. We're located at 1111B Pulaski Pike, right here in Huntsville, Alabama. Bishop Charles E. Rogers is our senior pastor. Come join us for our Sunday morning worship services at 9 o'clock and 11:15 a.m. We also have Bible study on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock p.m. I would like to take this time to invite you to our Empowered to Live conference. It will be held on August 24th and 25th. On Friday, August 24th, from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock p.m., we will be having a block party featuring a carnival with food and fun for all ages. On Saturday, August 25th, from 8:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., we will be having empowerment sessions with dynamic speakers to represent the married couples, singles, youth, college, young adult, men, and women's ministries. We will also have sessions on overcoming grief and divorce, and vendors on site to offer products and services. We will culminate the weekend with a concert from our very own HCC Fine Arts Department, under the direction of Minister of Music Jeremy Kelsey. That will be held on Saturday, August 25th at 7 o'clock p.m. So come join us for a weekend of empowerment and fellowship. We are the Hope in the Valley.
pass me by.
In the 34th Psalm, beginning our reading at verse number 15. And it reads on this wise, the eyes of the Lord upon the righteous, and his ears are open to their cry. The face of the Lord is against them that do evil, to cut off the remembrance of them from the earth. The righteous cry, and the Lord heareth, and delivereth them out of all their troubles. The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord but the Lord delivers him out of them all. And the church said, amen. I just need you to look at somebody and say, God can deliver. I know he can. You may be seated in this house. I believe that, I know this morning somebody here needs to know that all the bad that you find yourself in, the good news is that you've made it to this house. Amen. And that deliverance is in this house because he can. Don't talk to me about a God who can save your soul from hell, but can't deliver you from alcohol or drugs or a nasty attitude. Don't talk to me about a blood redeemer who can save your soul but not heal a wounded heart, unforgiveness, bitterness, and a dejected spirit. I'm glad that the Bible doesn't just stop with the fact that God can save, but that it tells us that he can also deliver. I don't always know when he's going to deliver. And in fact, there's times when I don't think he is going to deliver. But it doesn't mean that he cannot deliver. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would tell you that because they stood in the face of a furnace, unsure if God would bring them out at all. But no doubt that a God who, even if he don't bring you out, he's still able. Do I have any witnesses in here? That's what I feel this morning, that if God don't do what I ask him to do this morning, he's still an able God. One of the benefits I love about reading these Psalms, and I'm going to preach quick so you can come go with me, is that it gives us a picture of how God moved for the godly in the Old Testament in times of disappointment, sorrow, and trouble. And that's good to know because us seeing God pull them out of trouble will give us somewhat of a template. So that when those times when we get in trouble, we can still believe that God's going to pull us out. And in this world, you need to understand that no matter who you are, you're going to have some trouble. The Bible says in John 16 that God says that in this world you're going to have tribulation, but be of good courage because I have overcome the world. This is crazy because God is saying that I want you to expect to go through the fire, but I want you to look at my experiences and know that I'm able to pull you out of the fire. Isn't God good? In other words, God says, don't worry about what you've been by, what has you bound, because I'm still able to make you free. This is one of the things I love about God, that he doesn't just let you get in trouble, but he has created a purpose for everything that you have gone through in your life. Everything that you have had to deal with, God says, I've created it. So that if God created it, there's no such thing as I'm in too much trouble. Because every bit of trouble that you're in, God measured it and he pulled it to the side and made sure that it was fit for your circumstance and to produce in you everything that he wanted to produce in you. In other words, God says, before I let anything happen in your life, I have measured you and made sure that you had the capacity that when you went through it, that you knew that I'm able to bear it, because God says that I won't put more on you than you're able to bear. How many believers do I have in here? In other words, God's saying that anything that I let you go in, I have the power to sustain you in it until I bring you out of it. And I don't care how bad your situation is. I don't care how far you've fallen. God is a God who's able to get you out. And there's some people in here today, and you need to imagine the thing that has you bound today. But I come to tell you that before the service is over, God says he's going to be delivering some folk and pulling you out of some stuff that you said that you'll never get out. I wonder if there are any people who already know what deliverance is like. You know, I'm talking about folk who had bad attitudes and fought all the time, and they told you that God will never do anything about your nasty spirit, but God has already cleaned you up. And now when you used to fight every time, now you just learn how to walk away because you know what deliverance feels like. Don't tell me that God can't deliver because you're looking at somebody who couldn't stop his coke habit. He never didn't want to stop and had no mind to couldn't get up smoking the bud and drinking the Budweiser, if you please. But God, you tell me a God who's able to heal me when I'm sick in my body, can't pull a joint out of my hand. The devil is a liar. What you got to do is you got to make up your mind that you understand that there's nothing too hard for him to do. I wish I had some help in this place. Do I have anybody who know that God, he's able to do anything? And can I tell you also, if God's able to do it, he's never too late when he comes to it. Do I have any believers? How many know that he may not come when you want him to come? But if he's coming on time. Just ask Lazarus in John chapter 11. The Bible says that Jesus knew Lazarus was sick, but he waited 2 days. Sometimes, baby, God waits until the thing seems messed up before he comes. Because after 2 days, he came, and the Bible says that Lazarus had already died. And Jesus comes stepping up at Lazarus' funeral, talking about, and Mary is mad and Martha is mad, saying, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. How many know that when you're talking about a miracle, you ain't got to worry about who's around, because God is able to do it despite whether your crew can help or your posse can help. I know one thing, God is able to help, and Lazarus is laying in a grave and Jesus is talking like ain't nothing happened. Sometimes, baby, you got to hold your peace and keep on believing even though it don't look like it's possible. You just got to know that if God said it, he's able to do it. I wish I had somebody in this place. Is there anybody in here who need a miracle that don't look like it's possible to come? Well, God told me to tell you, don't let go simply because it looks like it's too late. Even though it looks like it's too late, God ain't never late. God's just waiting till you get through worrying with it so that he can produce what he's going to produce out of it. He's trying to produce. He's not trying to prove you. God's trying to give you something you ain't never had before. Is there anybody in here in need of a comeback? Well, God's trying to give you a comeback, and you can't have a comeback until you're brought low, until you're at the end of your journey, until you're ready to throw in the towel, and God will pull you from situations that you ain't never thought you'd be pulled from. Look at somebody and tell them, it's my season to come back. My God, look at him now. I almost preach, let it die. Because sometimes before God will do anything in your life, he got to let a situation die. And that's why some of you have given up on things that God ain't given up on yet. It's because God is trying to prove to you that there's nothing too hard. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Jesus said, you'll see him again. Lord have mercy. You see, thank you, Pitts, because sometimes you got to talk faith when you don't see nothing at all. Sometimes you got to act like it's coming. Have you ever been fronting, well, we call it fronting. But sometimes, baby, when when you're wrestling with whether or not a thing is going to happen, you just start talking to your friends like it's already come to pass. Yes, I'm still going to get the job. Honey, the lady called me the other day and she said that they're just waiting to hear from the front office when I'm going to take my test. Now, you know ain't nobody told you that you gonna get the job, but you're speaking things that be not as though they already are. Sometimes when you hear something in your spirit, you got to announce it with your mouth and say, God said. And even though it don't look like he said, I still believe that even though I'm in a dead situation, he's able to call me out of it. That's why when everybody was talking about how dead Lazarus was, Jesus stood in front of his tomb and hollered his name and said, Lazarus, come forth. And he comes hopping out of his dead place, wrapped in his grave clothes, because sometimes, baby, when you get delivered, you're still wrapped up in some things. How many know that you're out of the situation, but you're still tied up by some of it? You quit him, y'all ain't seeing each other, but you're still a little wrapped. Because you ain't able to talk to him yet. Oh God, I can't get nobody in here. Because when God delivers you, there's still some stuff that he's got to take loose from you. Because that's why, baby, when you're vulnerable and God calls you out of some situation, you don't just walk back in the situation. Some of y'all say, well, I came out of the club and God's trying to get me, to witness in the club. No, go stop that. Honey, God called you out of situations. Don't you walk back in them. Don't you be going around the crack house and God just delivers you out of crack. You ain't strong enough yet. You delivered, but you're still tied up. Still got some stuff on you. And honey, if you we don't do no we don't do no dating after the dating ended. Because I'm still emotionally tied. I can't figure out if she's any good or not because I'm emotionally. So you left them because they were okay. But there's something about being delivered for a season that makes you forget what you've been called out of. And one of the things I found out about church folk is that we talk stuff that we ain't gonna never do. And talk is cheap. And one of the things, you can't talk to God about stuff you ain't going to perform because God ain't playing games. You can play games with people, but when you make a vow to God, you better do it. The Bible says that Jephthah, you remember Jephthah who was going out to battle against the Ammonites, and the Bible says that when he was going out to battle, he said, God, if you give me this victory, I'll give you the first thing that comes out of my house. And when God gave him the victory, and the first thing that met him when he came home was his daughter. And I'm coming to tell you, he had to give up his daughter because he didn't understand that you just can't tell God something that you don't do. You can't just sit in jail talking about, God, if you get me out of this, I'm going to serve you all the days of my life. And if your Lord heal me this time, nobody has to tell me. If you pay my rent this time, Lord, I'm going to pay tithe all the days of my life. And when the moment you got your rent paid and your body healed and got released on parole, you end up, Lord, doing everything that you wanted to do and forgot what you said to God. God don't play games. How many know I'm telling the truth? Some of you are living under a curse now because you told God you're going to do something and you ain't done it yet. And you can't figure out how come your life ain't released. It's because your promise ain't kept. Now, I know I'm not the only one to know somebody who done told God something and forgot it the moment he did it. Well, I can even do better than that. I know I'm not the only one who told God something. Okay. I need to get to real people. You see, because it's easy when you're in trouble to say, God, I'm going to bless you. It's easy when you know, it's easy to play bargain games with God when you need God to do what you can't do. When you need a miracle, it's easy to tell God anything, but you don't understand when you told God, God heard you. And he was looking for what you said you would do. If you had been here, my brother would not have died. And let me tell you something else about God. He's not just a deliverer. I'm glad for the stuff God delivered me out of, because, you know, there's some stuff, you know, I tell about some of my stuff, but how many know you can't tell all your business? Yeah, my God, I'm glad there ain't no signs on some of us. I'm just glad I am. I mean, now you may not be glad, but I'm glad that there's some things that God kept on the low. I'm glad that he didn't show it. I'm glad that he let me out without, news time. You sitting here today, and the reason that you can sit in here and act like you better than anybody else is because everybody don't know everything that God knows about you. And so what God does, he hides some stuff so that you will still be useful to him, because if he told everything, honey, then nobody would want to be around you. I'm so glad that you don't know everything you want to know. Do I have anybody here? Aren't you? You know, that's why I don't deal with nosy people, because nosy people, all they do is ruin their own spirit, because there's some things you've been asking to hear you don't want to hear. There's some stuff you don't want to hear, because when we talk about deliverance, deliverance is not an easy thing. Deliverance is messy, because if God delivered you, you know you must be in a situation where you need deliverance from something. But I'm glad that he just don't deliver. I'm glad that with everything that God delivered me from, there was some stuff that he never had to deal with me about. Do I have anybody? Aren't you glad aren't you glad that there's some things that you ain't never had to go in? See, because he's not just a deliverer, he's also a keeper. I can't get nobody. Oh, yeah, I love to hear the testimonies about how God pulled me out of situations. But I want to talk about the people who ain't never had to go in it. Feel me here. There's some people who ain't never been in circumstances and situations. And it's not because they any better or they live better or anything. It just means that God has kept them. Because if God don't keep us, all of us who think that we've been, that we're through drinking today will go back to drinking tonight. If God don't keep us, all of us who gave up the bud will go back to the bud tonight. Do I have anybody in here? I know I'm not talking to a room full of people who stopped smoking weed. I'm talking to somebody who's still fighting. But even if you're fighting, you ought to be glad today that God is still able to keep you and deliver you from what you're fighting over. I love to preach about David. Give me 3 minutes. Love to preach about David, because David is one of those individuals that we like to think of him one way, but really the truth of the matter is that God saw him differently. And when we think about him, we think about him as holy, but really he wasn't all that holy. I believe in David because I am David, because David made some mistakes. After all, feel me here, a man, he slept with a man's wife and killed the man. He had bad relationship with most of his children, and even in the 34th Psalm, when he's writing it, he's running from his past, because in 1 Samuel chapter 20 talks about him running from Absalom, because the prophet Nathan told him that the sword will never depart from his house. He's on the run, and his son's trying to kill him. His daughter gets raped by his other son. Now, if he was in the church today, we wouldn't receive him real good, because we would spend a lot more time talking about him than praying for him. David, I am David, because David was not understood by people, because everybody thought that David did enough for God to kill him. But aren't Aren't you glad that God don't kill everybody that we want him to kill? Aren't you glad that we serve not just a God who has the ability to destroy us, but he has mercy on us? I'm glad that God choose broken people and people who and put people who got their dreams on hold, and he specializes in folk that everybody else would have written off. The Bible says in Psalms 147 that he tell the number of stars and call them by their name. God knows you so good. He knows everything that he's created. He not only knows the number of stars, but he got pet names for them, and he can call everything that's out there by his name. The Bible says that he knows the hairs on your head. In other words, when you go to the barber shop, God can separate them on the floor and say, now this is the one that he cut an inch off of 157. He cut an inch off of 7,013,000,000 because he knows and numbered them. That's the kind of God we serve. There's 7 billion people on the planet. God knows you so well that if you stop breathing, he'll know it the moment that you start losing your breath. Somebody holler, he knows me. He knows you. That's why you don't worry about what other people think about you, because God knows you. He knows everything about you. You can quit fighting people who don't like you, because God made you the way you are, and everything he's going to change about you, God has to change it in you. That's why David, when he gets up in the morning, he don't complain about everything that happened bad in his life. He starts the chapter saying, I bless the Lord at all times. Is there any?
I hope you have enjoyed our broadcast. If you would like more information about our ministry, or if you want to contact us, please visit us on the World Wide Web at www.hccministries.com or on Facebook at I Love Hope Community Church. Until next time, we are the Hope in the Valley.